This is the Breeders Cup Juvenile Fillies Monster Podcast presented by Spendthrift Farm, home of Breeders Cup Classic winner Vino Rosso, the sire of Grade 1 winner Bottle of Rouge. PTF and David Aragona from Daily Racing Form back with you on the In the Money Media YouTube channel here today to talk about the Breeders Cup Juvenile Fillies, a race which I am fascinated to see how it plays out on paper. David, we talked about the juvenile in another video having potentially the shortest priced winner of the 2 days of the Breeders' Cup. I have nothing against those at the top of the market here. I think they're interesting, but given the kinds of figures we've seen these horses run, wouldn't surprise me if you had one of the bigger prices potentially winning a race like the Juvenile Fillies. I would love to hear your overview of the ones you think are going to be leading the betting as we start off.
Yeah, this Juvenile Fillies is definitely a more wide open race than the male counterpart, where it feels like two horses that by far run the fastest speed figures and look like squarely the ones that beat that are going to attract a lot of support. In this race, as you said, from a speed figure standpoint, a lot of the top players haven't really separated themselves from those that could be bigger prices. So this could be a race where you get a little bit of chaos. From a betting standpoint, I'm working on my early morning line for this race, and the top two choices that I've got right now are Explora at 3-1 as of 2 weeks before they draw the race, and Tommy Joe is the second choice at 4-1, but they're not exactly dominant when you look at the recent performance. I know they're both coming off victories in major prep races around 2 turns, but it wouldn't be a surprise if somebody else stepped up in this race.
Let's talk a little bit more about those two before we pull in maybe something at a bit more of a price that might be of interest. Tommy Joe, for our friends over at Spendthrift, right? It wasn't exactly the manner of victory I was necessarily expecting the last day. Still a serious contender. Feels about right to me at the kind of price you were mentioning internationally right now. Very, very similar type of numbers. How do you assess her chances overall?
I mean, she was the one that was talked about this summer on the East Coast after 2 impressive victories at Saratoga. She looked really good on debut, beat a decent field in the Spinaway very convincingly. But sometimes these horses that are really good during the summertime, they don't continue developing into the fall when the distances get longer. And kind of felt like that might have been the case with Tommy Joe and the Alcibiades. Now, you could debate what would have happened if there hadn't been a bumping incident in mid-stretch, because Percy's bar, who was leading that field into the lane, definitely slammed Tommy Joe at about the 8th pole, which stopped her momentum. Not sure that she was really going to go by that foe, but the margin would have been closer between those two. But still, the fact that Tommy Joe was having to work that hard to even get by Percy's bar, considering that she was 2-5 in the betting for that race, it's a little disappointing. And you look at pedigree, I mean, she's by Into Mischief. They can go longer, but on the damn side, her damn mother was more of a 1-turn, 7 furlong to a 1-turn mile type of horse. So I'm not sure that longer distances are going to be her forte moving forward. But in a race like this, where nobody has really stepped forward from a speed figure standpoint, she's a contender. It's just a matter of how short a price you'd want to take.
Let's talk about Explora as the alternative. You've got them ranked similarly in terms of how you think the public is going to react. This one going out for Bob Baffert, coming off that big win in the Oakleaf. How much better do you think she needs to get to win a race like the Juvenile Fillies?
I mean, she's definitely going to have to beat a better field than she did in the Oakleaf, because the prep races for this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies have not necessarily been stacked with talent. So this is going to be the toughest test that all these fillies are going to be facing. I guess the big advantage that she has is that she doesn't have to ship for this race. She's based out on the West Coast, whereas a lot of her main rivals will be coming in for this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I liked the progression that she showed mentally in the Oakleaf, where Bob Baffert took the blinkers off from her first couple of starts, and she seemed way more relaxed in the early stages. He was content to rate outside of a stablemate in the early stages of that race, took over and won pretty convincingly in the end. She's a horse that definitely has pedigree to handle longer distances, being by blame out of a Bernardini mare, and she showed no problem getting it. She was obviously a speed crazy 2-year-old over the summer, but it's nice to see them kind of transform themselves as the distances get longer into the fall, and it feels like she did that. So I'll be interested to see how much speed is in the race, because I don't think she's one that wants to be that far off the pace, but to me, based on what she's done, she does feel like the horse to beat.
They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Vino Rosso has taken the lead, and it's a vintage performance by Vino Rosso.
Bottle of Rouge from her own stable is one I know a lot of people are excited about off that Mar Debutante win. This one on blood should be able to go long. We're not going to know until the day. How serious of a contender do you see her as?
Yeah, I mean, she did beat Explora, who could go favorite in this race when she won that Mar Debutante in a bit of an upset at the end of the Mar meet. I mean, it's interesting. Bob Baffert had the winner of the Mar Futurity for the males and the Mar Debutante for the fillies, and he decided to skip the final two-turn prep race with both of them, Brandt on the male side, and now with the females, Bottle of Rouge, the same thing. I think Bottle of Rouge just gives you a little more confidence that she's going to want the two turns when you watch her run. So it does make a little more sense with this horse that Bob Baffert wouldn't need to find out if she can go longer, because everything about the way she runs and her pedigree says that longer distances are supposed to be right up her alley. But she still has to do it, and she still has to break an 80 Beyer Speed Figure, which her major rivals have already done in this race. So she's going to have to get faster. But if she's the third or fourth choice in this race, I can get a little bit interested in her.
More questions than answers, and the price will determine. Talked about Percy's Bar before and that win in the Alcibiades. What about the chances of her confirming that form, and at least form in terms of who passed the post first, and continuing to go on in a forward trajectory? Do you like her chances?
Yeah, I mean, disappointing for the Connections. They couldn't get that grade 1 victory. The stewards took it away from them, because I know it was a big deal for Connections like that to win a grade 1 race with this horse. But she ran well in the Alcibiades. Obviously, Tommy Joe maybe not running as well as you would have expected, made her look a little bit more impressive than she otherwise would have. And the bumping incident obviously gave her an advantage. But she did improve going longer. She ran a faster number. Based on pedigree, I wouldn't necessarily have expected her to get better with added distance, but it seemed like the front running style that she used last time really worked for her. I'm not sure if that same trip is going to be available for her in this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, so that's a bit of a concern for me. But she's a horse that trained really strongly into her last race, and she sometimes tells you how she's going to do in her morning training. So she's the kind of horse that I'd really want to follow morning workouts and the clock report to see how she's doing ahead of this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies.
Well, that's the perfect segue to the next thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of your Breeders' Cup analysis. You're part of the DRF Breeders' Cup package, where there's going to be PPs, there's going to be analysis, there's going to be projected odds, and there's going to be that clocker report to get that and your thoughts as the race develops. We encourage folks to go to drf.com and check that out. An indispensable part of my handicapping when it comes to the Breeders' Cup for sure. And hey, if you want even more out there, folks, you can check out some of the stuff that we have on the In the Money Plus side for Breeders' Cup that aren't anywhere else. Figure equivalencies for foreign horses, trip notes, things like that. You can check that out in themoneypodcast.com/plus. But from this far out, and we were talking about this way early, before the pre-entries even, we talked about this as a race that could throw up a long shot. Is there one in particular or a horse of interest that, not asking you for a tip, but somebody you're really curious to see how they run outside of those top contenders that we've already discussed?
I mean, similar to the conversation we had about the juvenile, we're kind of waiting to see who's actually going to run in this race among those that could be in the 10 to 15 to 20 to 1 range. I'm intrigued to see if any of the horses from the Frisette actually do go out west. Seems like the Frisette winner, Iron Orchard, who's trained by Danny Garkin, he's on the fence. And I think last reporting from, I think it was Dave Grenning, he's leaning against going out there, but we'll see if he changes his tune about that. If she goes, I would be intrigued by the Frisette runner-up, Riley Tolley, who seemed like she really improved going longer for Safi Joseph. I like the way that she finished that race, and she seems like the kind of horse that probably wouldn't attract that much support in this race, and I think at a distance is really proving to work for her. So I'd be intrigued by her getting out around 2 turns for the first time.
David, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll check you out over at drf.com and part of that Breeders' Cup Advance package from DRF, and we'll talk soon.
Yep, sounds good, Pete.